So what did he say? That the shaila is that the posuk is indicating there's two kinds of truma. There's the truma. There's actually three stages. Bachlal and a korban. No, it's two stages in the korban, and therefore it's two stages in truma. Sorry, namely, there's the truma that the yid gives to the kohen from the dough. That the Torah calls truma. But then the Torah adds, when you eat from the bread, you give truma. So there's a second truma. Bottom line answer, in general, is yichud tato, yichud ilah. The first refers to earthly bread, and the second is, he goes on to say, heavenly bread, meaning to say, bread that is consumed by heaven, yichud ilah, by the supernal man. And he went on to explain, as this applies to karbonis in general, namely, the diuk that the atonement or the completion of a korban is only after the korban, after the kohen eats. That through achilas hakohenim, then only afterwards, mischaprim habaylim, says the Gemara. Notwithstanding that the mizbeach already consumed, it's part of the korban. Why is it so critical that the kohen has to eat his korban? I'm talking about a korban chatas, or a korban, or an asham. Why is it so important that the kohen also eat, and that is the shleimus of the korban? The answer is that the kohen represents the Eibishter, and the kohen's consumption, that is the yichud ilah, that's Hashem's revelation directly from above to below. Whereas the consumption of the mizbeach, so that is yichud tato, that's avodas habirurim, that's lechem min ha'aretz. Lechem min ha'aretz is earthly bread, is the refinement of the world that we affect. Lechem min hashamayim is the refinement of the world that the Eibishter affects, and that produces an experience of heaven, heavenly bread. As Hashem looks at, and more than looks at, as creation, as he relates to creation, which means fundamentally truthfully. We explained yesterday that even though it's not our avodah and we cannot escape, the Beinani cannot escape yichud tato, cannot transform his nefesh bahamis and yetzer hara. He only controls it. So why are we even speaking about yichud ilah? So he explained at length yesterday, and the stories illustrated it, that without at least entertaining in seichel, be mizbeinen, and that's the Shema Yisrael, he should be mizbeinen, havai yachod, then yichud tato alone is not enough. Because if we don't escape the self, at least in our mind, it's a dimyan. It is a dimyan, but it's not a dimyan shav. There's nothing wrong with dimyonis. There's nothing wrong with imagining, entertaining things that are beyond us. It's wrong if what is imagining is a fantasy. Or one imagines, one holds by it. But a dimyan per se, adarab, it's a very gewaldik and part of our avodah. And our avodah of Shema Yisrael is a dimyan. That's why we close our eyes. But without it, if it's only yichud tato, and that's always stuck, then he's inevitable that he will be tempted and sin, and that will become his reality. He'll fall there into its clutches. As we said yesterday, what is the avodah of yichud ilah? How does it manifest? At least in one way, we said, is he's embarrassed. He's embarrassed. Chassidus takes the edge off. Therefore, meditating, knowing in seichel upon him. It's called chassidische hanoche, the attitude. The attitude. So having at least the attitude of yichud ilah, which is the truth. So even though his world is the world of the nefesh habamis yitzhar and every temptation under the sun, but again, as we said yesterday, to some degree or another, and the more he learns chassidus, so it has to take the edge off. Kiyadua, the famous teaching that three things have to have an effect: mashke, wine, and money. Mashke, chassidus, and money, and you see he has it and he didn't. It's not enough. So like with the chassidus, that a person learned Chassidus and still the same mamish grobe young that he was before he learned, which means unrefined fella, it's not enough. It's impossible otherwise. It's impossible not that every day that a person immerses his mind in the likus, that to some degree in the course of the day, it's a little edeler, a little less excited or upset about Dvarim Gashmi. He's going to be, but a little bit of an edge off. And what does that mean? That translates in that he's not going to hurt the other person because of it. At least that. Let it out in his wife, his kids. No, that's where he draws the line. Why? Because he learned, see this epis. And the reality is godliness, so it has to have an effect. But you need to immerse in it. So the daily learning, we all know in our personal lives, it made a difference. It became big masculine, and not necessarily. But even in a subconscious way, it just lifts a person a little bit edel. The more edel. So that is the inyan why it has to be the inyan of what? Of Yichudi Ilah. Now going to much more detail now. So there has to be inyan of lechem min ha'aretz, which elicits lechem min hashamayim. So that he answers the question why the two truma. There's the truma, the challah that he eats before he eats, that he gives to the kohen, and then there's the challah after he eats. And that's the Yichud Ilah, that's the Eibishter's eating, as it were. More deep with the detail we learned yesterday that the avoid of Yichud Tatar is the lion. We explained what's the meaning of the lion. The lion is he gets his prey through. He has to. He's not fed. He has to extract his prey. That's the avoid of extracting the berurim, is to go out and get it. That means she does it, not him. You know that not the male lion. She does that because she's malchus. Within Bachal, the lion is malchus, melech. The malchus gufa, so obviously it's the female lion. But akaponim, that's the shape of the fire. Ravutza kari, the shape of the fire on the mizbeach is the shape of a lion. Even though it's our avodah that descended from heaven, because the sinas comes from heaven. It always starts at the source of even our avodah, lach min ha'aretz, doesn't come in a vacuum. This itself comes from the sinas koyach. So the fire descends, but then we have to fuel the fire and keep it going. It's our avodah. The Zohar says, the fire that eats the korbanos. That's all the mizbeach. Then there's a lechem min hashamayim, and that is Yichud Ilah. That is the ultimate birur of the world. Now, much more detail now. Gimel, yeah. The inyan bazeh, and the inyan is as follows. I didn't finish the mind, but it seems it goes like layers and layers and layers, and then in the avoid at the end. It's a beautiful mind. So the mitzvah challah, which is on the discussion here, Aleph or echad rather migimbal ha-mitzvah shenitna li'isha, is one of three mitzvahs given to the woman, which are nida, challah, v'adlakas haneh. We all know it's Rosh Tevis Chana, Rosh Tevis hachein, sheker hachein, hevala yofi. So there's chein de kedusha, that's challah, nida, and adlakas haneh. Why were these mitzvahs given to the woman? Says the Gemara in the Medrash, Chava kilkala, Eve, Chava kilkala, she ruined the Garma Misa Adam Marishan and caused death to Adam Marishan, all humanity thereafter. So what's the connection? Shoyadom Shalim, he was the blood of the world. Why is he the blood of the world? This is actually from the Yerushalmi. So the Korban Eidah there says, I need to look this up. I couldn't understand what does it mean, the blood of the world. So he says that the Korban Eidah, which is the basic Piddush in Yerushalmi, that the pasuk says that before the Melition came, he's the one that elicited rain. He asked for rain. And then rain came and watered. So that's the idea of the blood, which the in the Aretz, the mist that rose up and then becomes rain, that was thanks to Adam Arishan. That's the idea of the blood that literally waters and brings life to the body. So he is the blood of the world. He is the chal of the world. What do you think is the chal of the world? What do you say? That's Pashut. Why is he likened to challah?
Breadwinner.
In his very identity, not what he does. He was made. Abishta made him like you make bread. He took the earth and mixed it with the water and made him and formed man. And finally, Neder Shel Olam, because the neshama is called the candle, Ner Hashem, is Nishmas Adam. So through the sin, he got ruined, and what is he? He is the dam and the challah and the ner. Hence, so therefore, these mitzvahs are given dafka to the woman to be misakenet. So what that is going to explain over here is, without spelling it out in black and white, this is the kavanah el yoina, that we all have to engage in. We are all the isha. The Ibishter is the husband, we are the wives. It's clouds all of us. But Einachanami, within humanity gufa, the one who does the real birur is the woman, Pasha Begashmius. In the words of the Gemara, the husband brings home the wheat or the flour. But who turns the flour into bread that can be eaten and consumed and elevated? She does. So the real hands-on birur of the world, that's why she's exempt from mitzvahs. But she's doing something greater. She's engaged in child rearing in the home and mamish making the dira. She makes the home a dira. He brings the raw materials. What makes it a home? Who makes it? Whose decisions is it? What should go where? What should be bought? It's her. Because the mamish, the making of the transforming Pel Mamish into a home, it's the balabasta. She's called the balabasta. She's the master, the mistress, master of the house. So that thinking of the Isha goes again. It's Bachalal Eden, but Beprati is talking of the Isha. Now, what are these three mitzvahs going to explain now? Well, Bira Inyan, the explanation is as follows. The Hine, it starts with Nida. Nida Chala Adlaka Saner. So what's the end of Nida? Shibedam, that's the blood. So this goes in Avodas this goes in Avodas Habirurim, refining the world. What's the connection to blood and the refinement of the world? How is blood formed? It's formed as a result of the person ingesting food and the food being digested and refined. And the pseilis, the waste, the waste is rejected outside of the body, and from the choice nutrients of the food, nasedam, that becomes blood. Moreover, dam is bad. And what happens? And from the choice, the most refined dimension of the blood, what happens is this becomes refined, v'nas mimena blood, and the child is born from that. He brings this in Tanya, Perek Beis. Isha Mazras, he doesn't bring this part, he brings the loiven, what he produces, what he gives. Isha Mazras Oidem, she gives, so her seed is red, and his seed is white. Says that, so Gemara says who gives what? And she, Shmemendo Bosa, the flesh, the main body of the child comes from the woman, which comes from her blood, which comes as a result of the elevated food, the nutrients. Be clear? Yeah? And later, not just the creation of the child, but the nourishment of the child, the nursing of the child, in a dam nekar, the blood spoils, as it were, v'naseh chalav, and becomes milk. This, by the way, is one of the reasons the Mefarshim give of the Isser Basa B'chalav. What's the Isser Basa B'chalav? So they say be'etzem, it's the Isser of blood, because the chalav is produced by the blood, and when you cook it with the meat, it reverts back on some molecular level. That's not the language of the Mefarshim, to blood. So be'etzem, the Isser Basa B'chalav is eating the blood. And why we don't eat the blood is verstandig, because the blood is the carrier of life of the animal. And by eating it and ingesting it, we are aggravating our own nefesh habahamis, and we have enough to contend with our own nefesh habahamis. We don't want to bring in the tchunas, the properties, the characteristics of the physical animal. So the blood has to be removed. So basa b'chalav be'etzem is really the isser of dam. As we see here, that the blood becomes milk, so which sustains the child, her milk. So all to say that what's the, it's all one thing. It's all to say that what's the of nida dam, which deals with the blood. In Pashtus also, what's the of nida? Nida is potential life that didn't happen, that could have become. She didn't be, right? That the nida is the expulsion of the life that didn't happen. Readiness and didn't. So what's the of the blood? So that's the bitter, like it's also it shall bitter over there. So bottom line is that blood is avodas haberurim. She eats the bread, and then she produces the child, and nourishes the child. Let's continue in square brackets with the Gemara. So BTS Mitzrayim Matan Torah. We find this Seder Hadvarim, this order, Yitzias Mitzrayim and Matan Torah. How so? Shebitzias Mitzrayim Ksiv B'domai Chayi. Right? We say this in the Haggadah. The Pasuk says, B'domai, even in your blood, Chayi, you will live. And one of the references there is the dam of the bris, of the milah, and that's chus. They went out of Mitzrayim. There's many meanings. Akoponim. So we see that Yetzias Mitzrayim is associated with b'domai chayi. Just like blood is made from the refinement, better word, refinement from of the food after the expulsion of the waste outside. Well, that's Yetzias Mitzrayim. That's the ra that was left in Mitzrayim. And then comes stage 2, the child, the virtue, the milk, positive, the birth. When by Matan Torah there's zuma, their impurity. It was no longer. They were all purified. That's the next stage, not just the surmira, but the next stage of the blood becoming virtuous chalav milk. Now conclusion. So there's 3 levels of the neshama invested in the body. Nefesh, ruach, neshama. Right? Chai yichida, transcendent koiches. That's why the Mindig Chabad is the yarmulke has 2, made of two cloths. Chayin yichida, sits on top of the head. Nefesh b'chalal is ma'aseh b'peil. Ruach is with the midasa. And neshama seich. That's in general the difference between the 3 levels. So now we're talking. So dam dingin of dam nida, which is all about the bitter of the world, the rejection of the negative components. and the elevation of the positive components. So this is all what Moishe b'poyol by days in nasa tikim b'chinas nefesh. So this is mesaken. This is what Chava is doing. She's mesaken her avoid is the tikkun of the corruption and the staining of the neshama on all of its levels, starting with nefesh. He was the dam of the world. Ki adam hu nefesh. The Pasuk associates Pasha dam with what level? Nefesh. Conclusion. We're talking about avodah. We're talking about the avodah of challah, which comes in the context of first nida, then challah, and adlakas haner. It's a package of 3 avodas. And what are these avodas? These are avodas of the tikkun of the world on 3 levels. That's entrusted to who? To the Isha, which means Bachlal Eden, and as we said before, Baprati is the Isha. So the first tikkun is the tikkun of nefesh. And that's affected through what? Through the mitzvahs nida, which deals with the blood, which comes as a result of the bitter of the Michael, etc. Then, and that itself has 2 stages, the tikkun, that's Yitzias Mitzrayim, and then Matan Torah, that's the Cholav. He bring and dairy, and the association with dairy and Matan Torah. Yeah, because in the blood, after the bitter of the blood, the next stage is the blood becomes Cholav. So that's in Matan Torah, dairy. If somebody says this somewhere. If not, you have a discovery. Then, okay, one more thing. We'll just start this. We're following, yeah? Yeah. So that's the union of what? Of neither. Then the second mitzvah, which is challah, which is the subject at hand, nasa tikun b'chinas haruach. So challah elevates a higher level of the nefesh, level of ruach. Where do we see this? Shazel sha'omru, Yerushalmi, that same Yerushalmi. Sha'odam barishen challah tahira l'olam haya. He was a pure challah to the world. Hashem formed him again out of what? Out of the offer and the water. So he was the pure challah.
Also that he took him like you take challah. He made the whole world.
You what?
Took him from the offer like you take challah.
Like you separate challah. Yeah. So that's exactly the point. The Medrash, the Gemara says that. The chsiv vayitzer Hashem alikim misadam offer min adam. Hashem formed man offer from the earth, from the ground. Offer meshubach min adama. What's min adama? Offer earth. So min adama, he was taken for the most meshubach, the most refined part of the world. And where did Hashem take the earth to make Adam Arishan? Mitachas mizbeach, from under the mizbeach. Ichziv mizbech adama, that's also called mizbech adama. So adama here and adama there, min adama. Hashem formed him from where? From the earth under the mizbeach. Shazeh offer sheyiyeh. This is the earth that's going to be karka mishkan. This is the Mefarshim there. There's a whole shaila here because wasn't Adam Rishon formed in Gan Eden? It's not, first of all, not Yerushalayim, and not where the Mishkan was either, which was in the desert. He says the Mishkan. It's a whole discussion. Simple teretz is he was created in Gan Eden, but Hashem took earth from other places. That's one teretz. Where did he take the earth from? From the place of the Mishkan. And from the place of the Mizbeach, one place it says the Mizbeach, here it says the Mishkan. The Rambam brings in Hichos based Abchira that a person was created from the place under the Mizbeach, Yerushalayim, and the Beis Hamikdash. It's a market and match. Again, it's a whole pilpul to reconcile all of these opinions. And as we'll see later, there's a third opinion. The Zohar says that it doesn't mean the earth from the Mishkan Hagash, means from the earth, the Mishkan Aruch. So we'll see later. But at any rate, so what are we saying? I'm going to stop here. What are we saying now here is that the mitzvah of challah This is connected to Ruach, he's going to explain. And because what's the connection? Adam is made from the earth. And what earth? The earth which was where? From under the Mizbeach. And this is the Ruach, the pure Ruach that was given to him. There's Haydin Nefesh, the Ruach. The Ruach of Behemah goes down. And the Ruach, the spirit of man, ascends up. In summary, so we see the association with what? It's just, I mean, Mitzad, the Nigla connections is because he's called Chala Tahira. The word Tahira is associated with the Chala, and the word Tahira is associated with Ruach. Ruach Tahara. Ruach. So Ruach is connected with Tahara, and Tahara is the way the Gemara describes Adam as being not Stam Chala, but Chala Tahira. And why is that? Because he's made from a pure place, from the earth that's under the Mizbeach. Mishkan, Beis HaMikdash, Mizbeach Ruchni. Okay, to be continued. Again, it's going to be all explained in Avodah and layers and layers. Very beautiful.